Welcome to Wildfire. I'm Demby Sheether, and this is Midlife Medicine for Women on the Rise. Here, we believe your body isn't burning out, it's burning through. I speak with healers, teachers, and medicine women who walk this path alongside us. And once a month, in our Wisdom in the Room segment, I sit with real, ordinary women whose stories are the medicine. No pedestals, no credentials required, just truth. So, let's light it up. I want to talk about something today that I've been sitting with for a long time. Years, actually. And I want to do it honestly, without pulling punches, and also without just ranting on. And a quick disclaimer, the views expressed in this podcast are my personal opinions based on publicly available information, plus my own lived experiences. But as always, I encourage you to draw your own conclusions. And here's the thing. I've been inside these circles. I've watched them. I've read the books, attended the events. I've believed the teachers. And some of what I found there was genuinely useful. But what I also found, what I couldn't unsee, was a machine. A very sophisticated, very lucrative machine that is doing real harm to real people and dressing that harm up in the language of love and light. Today, we're talking about the New Age industrial complex. And I use that word because that's exactly what it is. A system. The events, the figures, the business model, and that particular brand of passive-aggressive condescension you get when you dare to ask a straightforward question. But first, I want to start with a story that changed my life and drew my immediate attention to what is so very wrong in the global spiritual, and in this case, witchcraft communities. Years ago, I became involved with a local spiritual teacher. I admired and respected her. We collaborated on retreats, I hosted her events, and I genuinely believed I'd found a supportive mentor and community. Then I organised my own charity fundraiser, and overnight the friendship ended, despite me inviting her to host it. Public criticism followed, along with a torrent of online abuse from people, her fans, strangers I had never met. It shocked me, to be honest, not simply because of what happened, but because what came from a community that spoke constantly about compassion, love, and healing was so vile and aggressive. That experience became one of my greatest teachers, though, because it showed me how strong I actually am, taught me how to keep showing up even under immense pressure, and also how important energetic integrity and psychic boundaries are. So, moving on, let's start with the conscious gatherings, because this is where the machine becomes most visible and, frankly, most absurd. Burning Man. Where do we even begin? It started as a countercultural art event, genuinely interesting, rebellious in many ways, but what it has become is something else entirely. 70,000 people, or roughly, in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada. Black Rock. I mean, really, I'll come back to this in a moment. Think extreme heat, crazy dust storms, dehydration, and a medical infrastructure that is simply not built to handle what goes on there. By all reports, the drug culture is completely normalised and almost entirely unmonitored nowadays. MDMA, ketamine, psychedelics are all apparently openly used, with zero screening for who should and shouldn't be doing this. No one is asking whether you have a trauma history, a heart condition, a predisposition to psychosis, for example. You're just handed the experience and told to radically self-rely your own way through it. Sources share that sexual assault incidences are also significantly underreported, and here's possibly why. The whole ethos of the event, the quote, no spectators, only participants philosophy, actively discourages people from intervening in what they witness. The culture does the work of suppressing accountability for them, in other words. And with all the distorted gender kink and furries, I'm a dog, fish, snail today psychoses going around, it's highly plausible that people could accidentally see things they wish they hadn't, and or either misconstrue the intent, or worse, not flag real abuse when it's happening. All because they're not up to speed with every single identity crisis going on now. Then there's the carbon footprint, which is staggering, by the way, being dressed up as a gift economy, while you're paying $575 or more for a ticket. Apparently they have 10 principles, things that include radical self-reliance, radical self-expression, etc. And they sound wonderful. But if you read between the lines, what they fundamentally do is remove the organisers from any meaningful duty of care. You signed up for radical self-reliance, so whatever happens to you is on you. You're an adult, suck it up. And the piece I personally find most telling, tech billionaires. They're now attending in their private air-conditioned camps, bringing in private chefs and staff, even their own generators. Spirituality complete with creature comforts. All the while standing on a stage and preaching egalitarianism to the masses who are sleeping in tents in 50-degree plus heat, pissing in the dirt quite often, or a bucket if they're lucky. And yet that appears to be a contradiction most don't seem troubled by. And going back to BlackRock and Vanguard are the corporate leviathans that every industry in the world funnels back into. They are at the top of the global pyramid and together are worth 24 trillion and counting. There is symbolism everywhere, and of course in the words as well, if we're willing to look at it. Burning Man presents itself as radically self-reliant, a journey in and of itself. And many people do have profound experiences there. I can't speak to everyone's experience, obviously. But I do think it's worth asking where personal responsibility ends and organisational responsibility begins. When tens of thousands of people gather in an extreme environment where dehydration, limited garbage and hygiene facilities, altered states and mental health crises are foreseeable, that balance deserves scrutiny. So here are some interesting comments on Reddit that I found after one Burning Man event. It sucks half the time you're there. The whole place is made out of tarps, zip ties, and bungee balls. Not sure what they are, but probably something to do like bungee ropes. I don't really like the energy that the rich tech bros and Instagram models have brought. The general cost of attending has gotten way out of control. One ticket and one vehicle pass eclipses the $1,000-ish mark. This one got me. You may want to start travelling to far off places to attend regional events and make these pilgrimages part of your regular routine. Now, I think some people are misunderstanding what an actual pilgrimage is. It doesn't involve desert couture, that's for sure, and rarely even reliable drinking water or toileting facilities. And this one says it all. It's worth keeping in mind that there is a seedy underbelly, just like in every city. There are thieves and violent people and antisocial people, etc. Also, some people with various mental health issues that are exacerbated by the harsh conditions and psychedelics. So great. Just because it's sold as a spiritual adventure doesn't make it immune to danger, folks. And being so remote, you really are at the mercy of the gods to a large degree, at least from what I hear about it. And no, I have never been to Burning Man and never will. The whole ritual of burning an effigy as the centerpiece of this extreme event has never sat well with me. I don't care how you want to dress it up. It's occultism. So moving on. Cosmic disclosure events, galactic federation conferences, this whole category of conscious gatherings. These typically feature claims like ET contact and humanity's imminent ascension to 5D consciousness. They also talk about hidden alien civilizations that are about to be revealed, something that people have been talking about for decades. Tickets for these events go for anywhere between $500 and $3,000 for a weekend. And here is the thing that should be the most obvious red flag, but somehow isn't. There is zero accountability for any of it. When the predictions don't come true, and they pretty much never do, the goalposts simply move. Oh, the mission evolved. The timeline shifted. We're in a new phase now, don't you know? And the audience keeps coming back and paying again and again because the framework is designed so that failure is always reframed as progress. I've also heard reports that the mess left behind these events is gargantuan, with litter and damage commonplace. Not really in line with loving the land or respecting the space, is it? Mind Valley runs events under names like Summit of Greatness and A-Fest, all very glossy, beautifully produced, mixing genuine personal development content with what I'd call consciousness expansion adjacent material. But these events are not endpoints, they are funnels, very expensive, very well-designed funnels into ongoing programs, memberships, and courses. And the event? That's the hook. Contact in the Desert sits at the crossover between genuine UFO research, some of which raises legitimate questions worth taking seriously, and channeling, Pleiadian messages, Arcturian contact, and what I can only describe as financial opportunity dressed up as cosmic revelation. The line between researcher and profiteer is essentially invisible at this point. Now let's talk about some of the people behind all of this, because I think it's important to understand who we're dealing with. And I'm just going to focus on three main offenders. Barbara Marx Hubbard. Hubbard passed away in 2019, but her influence on everything we're discussing here cannot be overstated. She was one of the original architects of the conscious evolution and ascension framework. When someone today talks about a self-selected portion of humanity ascending while others don't, that framing traces back to her work. Her alleged connections to elite foundations and the particular way her framework imagines a tiered humanity, or hierarchy, warrant a level of scrutiny that she never really received during her lifetime. Next is Dolores Cannon. And I want to spend some time on Dolores because she's less well known to some people, but arguably more influential than almost anyone else out of these three. Cannon developed what she called Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, or QHHT. She claimed to access clients' subconscious, which she redefined as a cosmic, all-knowing higher self, through deep hypnosis to retrieve past life memories, ET encounters, and messages from interdimensional beings. Her books, particularly the Convoluted Universe series and the Three Waves of Volunteers, form the core of much of what circulates now in ascension and starseed communities. When someone tells you they're a volunteer soul who came to Earth to raise its frequency, that framework almost certainly comes from Cannon, whether they know it or not. QHHT is now a paid certification industry. Practitioners pay for training and certification, then charge clients $300 to $600 or more per session. There is no clinical evidence base, no ethical oversight body, no safeguarding for clients who may be grieving, psychologically vulnerable, or seriously ill either. And here's what troubles me most about the actual practice. Cannon was routinely telling clients while they were in a deeply suggestible hypnotic state that they had lived on other planets, that they were chosen volunteers, that they had cosmic missions to complete. Now, any ethical psychotherapist, or any good therapist for that matter, will tell you that implanting that kind of identity narrative into a vulnerable person under hypnosis is deeply problematic. And her work is unfalsifiable by design. The subconscious she accessed conveniently confirmed every aspect of her existing cosmology across thousands of sessions. So we are either looking at the most extraordinary convergent spiritual discovery in human history, or we are looking at what the research on hypnotic suggestibility actually shows. That leading questions produce narratives shaped by the hypnotist's expectations. Cannon died in 2014, but her estate continues to generate significant income through QHHT certification programs, books, and online courses. So the brand is very much alive and expanding. Modern psychology has long recognized that hypnosis increases suggestibility. Now, that doesn't automatically invalidate every experience people report, but it does raise important ethical questions. Modern psychology has long recognized that hypnosis increases suggestibility. And that doesn't automatically invalidate every experience people report, but it does raise important ethical questions. If someone under hypnosis is encouraged to interpret vivid inner imagery as objective historical or cosmic truth, for example, how do we distinguish genuine insight from suggestion? That question deserves far more attention than it usually receives. And the third one, Abraham Hicks, one of the most financially successful New Age operations in history. Esther Hicks claims to channel a collective non-physical consciousness called Abraham. This began in the 1980s, initially in partnership with Wayne Dyer. Jerry Hicks managed the business while Esther channeled. Their teachings directly seeded The Secret in 2006, and author Rhonda Byrne has explicitly acknowledged the Hickses as foundational to the law of attraction framework that made her hundreds of millions of dollars. Cruises, workshops, live events regularly sold out at $300 to $800 a ticket. The quote-unquote vortex, their term for the energetic state of alignment with your desires, becomes the all-purpose explanation for why anything goes wrong. You simply weren't in the vortex. Whatever happened, that's why. Now, in 2011, Jerry Hicks was diagnosed with leukemia, which is of course tragic and sad. And the community faced an extraordinary moment of cognitive dissonance. Because here was the co-architect of a teaching that says illness is created by misaligned vibration, dying of cancer. And the explanation offered that Jerry had chosen this experience at a soul level. I would argue that is not spiritual wisdom. That is a closed loop designed to protect the framework at any cost. And this is also where I personally part company with the law of attraction. When every outcome, success or failure, can be explained within the framework becomes impossible to test. For example, if someone becomes ill, they're told they created it. If they recover, the teaching worked. If they don't recover, they weren't aligned enough. That kind of reasoning leaves no room for genuine accountability. And this brings me to the cruelest part of the law of attraction as Abraham Hicks teaches it, The logic embedded in it is this. If you are poor, if you are sick, if you have been abused, if you are suffering, it is because of your own vibrational offering. Because you have chosen to be sexually abused. You've chosen to be a child sacrifice. You've chosen to be disabled, begging on the streets of India. It removes all systemic critique. It removes the reality of actual evil in this world. And there is. It removes accountability from those who cause harm. And it places the burden entirely on the person who is already suffering. Esther Hicks has never submitted her channeling to independent scrutiny, allegedly. She has explicitly declined to do so. And Abraham, conveniently, never says anything that can be tested, falsified, or that conflicts with what the audience wants to hear. I was going to give you a list of names to check out and use as reference, but have decided against it. It's actually pretty easy to spot these people on YouTube once you know what to look for. So, here are some things to look for. Deadpan expressions, dead vacant eyes. Monotone voices, quite often hypnotic, almost like an NLP programming going on. They're not talking about true soul sovereignty. They use the standard New Age movement word salad vocabulary, timelines, crystalline codes, source, activated DNA, kundalini, ascension, chakras, the Galactic Federation of of light. They support the gender abuse of children and all that pronoun idiocy, in my opinion, that goes with it. They get involved with mainstream politics and take sides. They admire or use celebrities as positive examples of humanity. They might even hang out with elite celebrities. Many of them look like they've had a little bit too much plastic surgery with the fake nails, lashes, and tans, and that's okay to make yourself feel better about yourself, but it's not really in alignment with natural law. I've noticed that a lot of them have these little healing activation techniques like clicking their fingers or tongues or whistling, practicing light language apparently. Often their courses are repetitive numbers like 222, 777, 1111. Their channels often blow up overnight from a few followers, subscribers, to literally tens of thousands of followers. And the biggest one for me, the biggest red flag of all, is whether these people took and then also pushed the viral and the injection narratives, posting, "We're all in this together," and "I just got my booster banners" on their social media platforms. And look, I'll be honest, I followed a lot of these people in the past. I believed them on occasion. When I was in my panic phase, that, when I was overwhelmed by all the narratives and exhausted from hours, years actually, of doing my own research and waking up. But I had to go through that phase to come out the other side with deeper awareness and my radar finely tuned. I've also noticed that a lot of New Agers are collectively good at reinforcing energetic hierarchy, pushing alien saviors, and adhering to religious and occult calendar frameworks, things like the Lionsgate portal, while completely ignoring the actual dark agendas operating in this world. Even Easter and Christmas have been inverted, but instead of exposing that, they fluff around with their own version of these occult rituals and what I call peace, love, and mung bean word salads that don't actually mean anything. They never genuinely educate people about true sovereignty, as I've already mentioned, and they do tend to suppress the rather important truth that nature has remedies for everything. They also don't tell you that you don't need intervention from any beings in any other dimensions to access your own power here and now. You always have to go through an intermediary, not in the same way you would in the religious system, for example, like a priest, Jesus, or the Pope, but still there's a third party that you need to help or empower you. Cue the archangels, the Arcturian guides, the XYZs. They will tell you to go within and do your shadow work, but it's not real shadow work. And they certainly won't encourage you to do much of it because that would be being too negative. They also rarely explain why the uncomfortable work is actually the necessary work. So they're not really providing any real tools for you to find and activate your personal power. It all gets dissolved and convoluted into New Age jargon, sweeping statements about raising your vibration, jumping timelines, converging timelines, ascending to 5D, 12D, 33D. And of course, there's swathe of transformative courses that will keep you hooked in for years. There's also this idea of quote unquote new earth, and I want to address this directly because I find it genuinely alarming. The suggestion that if you ascend, you will somehow no longer have to navigate society, grow food, deal with restrictions, make compromises. And that is just not spirituality. That is escapism dressed up as evolution. You're still going to need to eat. You're still going to need to move through the physical world. Take the kids to school, get fuel. You'll still need to make decisions in alignment with your actual values, not a fantasy of transcendence. Even the idea of ascending, quote unquote, I find bizarre because if you believe you are an infinite being that was never born and never die, which is truth, then why would you need to ascend? After years of deep work, both personal and with clients, coaching people out of the New Age cult as well, I have zero hesitation in saying that at best, these figures are unconsciously compromised. And at worst, they are deliberately deceiving you. This part deals with what happens when you ask a question. And this could be to someone that you know or to one of those teacher/guru types. Let's say you've been to one of these events or you're in one of these communities now, or perhaps you're watching someone you care about pouring significant funds into something that concerns you and you're worried about them. Their mental health and their appearance is declining. They're looking like they're having a bit of a wobble. So you decide to ask them a question, a reasonable, evidence-based, straightforward question as far as you're concerned, with the best of intentions, because you genuinely care about their welfare. And here's what usually happens. They tell you to just, quote unquote, raise your vibration. Now, this one reframes your critical thinking as a symptom of spiritual deficiency. It's not a response to what you said, it's a way of saying your ability to ask this question proves you're not developed enough to understand the answer. It is a conversation ender disguised as wisdom. And it's an immediate red flag that they are under some kind of spell. And I've noticed something fascinating about this. In many healthy communities, difficult questions strengthen the group because they're welcomed. In unhealthy communities, difficult questions threaten the group because they're treated as disloyalty. Another one is, quote unquote, you're focusing on the dark. You're in a low, dense frequency. This is what psychologists would call thought stopping. And what it does is weaponize positivity. Any scrutiny you offer becomes evidence that you're the problem. Your concern is the darkness. Your question is the low vibration. You're the one who is disadvantaged because you don't know the same intel they do. This way, the teacher, or the one who's sharing, doesn't have to engage with a single word you said. Another is, quote unquote, I send you love and light. Now, this one is the ultimate passive-aggressive dismissal. It sounds generous, but what it actually communicates is this. Your concerns are so far beneath me that I won't dignify them with engagement, but I'll make sure everyone watching or reading sees how evolved I am in the way I decline to respond. Another, quote unquote, that's your ego talking. Classic ad hominem wrapped in spiritual language. Rather than addressing what you actually said, they want to delegitimize the source. Your question is obviously coming from your ego, your wounding, your unresolved stuff. Nothing about the actual substance of what you raised. Another, quote unquote, you're not ready to receive this truth. This one is pure gatekeeping. The teacher cannot be wrong. You simply lack the capacity to understand. This framing is airtight if you accept it. So don't accept it. Next quote, everything happens for a reason. You attracted this. This is victim blaming as metaphysics. And this neatly removes any obligation to examine whether harm was caused, whether the product worked, whether the claims were accurate. Because whatever went wrong, you obviously manifested it. Do your own research. Go within. Sounds empowering. Actually means don't look for external evidence. Don't ask us to substantiate our claims, and don't apply critical thinking. Just keep going deeper into the framework. Keep spending, keep believing, and eventually you'll feel it. When every question is answered with raise your vibration, that's your ego, you're not ready, and so forth, something important has happened. The conversation has stopped. Critical thinking has been redefined as spiritual immaturity, and that's not enlightenment, it's social control, whether anyone intended it that way or not. So up to this point in the podcast, you might be thinking, okay, some expensive events, some dubious claims, some condescending responses. Annoying, but is it actually harmful? Abso-bloody-lutely. And the pLandemic is where that becomes impossible to argue with. The pLandemic exposed something I'd suspected for years. Many wellness influencers had become brands first and teachers second. Some encouraged vaccinations, some opposed it. Some promoted supplements, others promoted meditation. My concern wasn't that they disagreed. My concern was how confidently many spoke outside their expertise, while millions of frightened, fear-filled people were listening and hanging on every word. A large platform brings influence. Influence brings responsibility. That responsibility shouldn't disappear simply because the advice is wrapped in spiritual language. Now, during 2020 to around about 2022, at the peak of the viral injection PSYOP, the New Age wellness influencer space became a vector for genuinely dangerous health advice. The financial, emotional, and energetic conflicts of interest were staggering. For example, Deepak Chopra, Joe Dispenza, Eckhart Tolle, Sadhguru, and many others told their followers to blindly follow orders and, quote, just trust the science. Deepak's Instagram page was saturated with mask-wearing, circle-standing, hand-sanitizing images and "we're all in this together" BS. Dispenza told his followers that meditation and elevated emotions could protect you against COVID-19, that the immune system could be consciously directed through thought and feeling to defeat the virus. Fair enough, but what he failed to mention was that viruses don't exist and that germ theory is a complete sham. David Wilcock, who sadly exited recently under tragic circumstances, went fully into conspiracy territory, as he was known for, framing COVID as deliberate population control and promoting various frequency-based and supplement-based cures. Of all his stories, this was one of the most accurate. But again, why would you need healing from a made-up pathogen? Podcasters like Joe Rogan, Aubrey Marcus, and Alex Jones platformed numerous COVID skeptic and anti-vaccine voices on their shows under the banner of asking questions and inspiring sovereignty, which I do admire, but they still didn't unpack germ theory or the fact that we can't catch germs from one another. They did keep selling their supplements and their merchandise, though. They just marketed it with very careful legal wording as, quote, immune support. And here is what I find most telling and also most disappointing personally of all. Many of these influencers, people with platforms reaching millions and millions, were not only getting jabbed themselves, but in some cases promoting the jabs publicly, while their communities were being fed legit misinformation. The people who faced real consequences for speaking out against mainstream narratives were not these influencers. They were the everyday people like me who asked questions publicly and who were then verbally abused, threatened, censored, and subjected to what I can only describe as concerted psychic attacks, tsunamis of them. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's about as far from peace, love, and light as you can get. So how does all of this manage to keep going? How do failed predictions, expensive retreats with inadequate OH&S, and pLandemic misinformation keep producing loyal, paying communities? Because the business model is immune to falsification. And let me explain that. If the healing works, it's evidence the teaching is true. If the healing doesn't work, it's evidence you didn't do the inner work correctly. That is the definition of an unfalsifiable belief system. That there is no outcome that can challenge the framework, and it's exactly what distinguishes it from either genuine spirituality or genuine science. I would also add that it's what distinguishes the wheat from the chaff. Genuine spirituality has always involved accountability, discernment, community scrutiny, and the wisdom to know when a teacher is wrong. And we do get it wrong sometimes. No teacher can know everything because we are all works in progress. And the ironic thing is that genuine science actively seeks to disprove its own hypotheses. Now, this machine, this new age business model, does neither. It evolves to absorb every challenge, reframe every failure, and redirect every question back at the person asking it. The tragedy at the centre of all of this, and I'm going to end here because I think it matters, is that the people who arrive at these events and communities are not fools. They arrive with real pain, real longing. They're raw and open. They've often been failed by conventional systems, either medicinal, religious, communal, and they are genuinely looking for something that works. I believe that genuine seeking deserves respect, and the exploitation of it is what I find reprehensible. Asking questions is not focusing on the dark. Expecting accountability from someone who charges $5,000 for a retreat is not moving from a low vibration. Wanting evidence for specific medical claims is not spiritual immaturity. It's basic human dignity. And you are entitled to it. A genuine teacher should become less necessary over time, not more. A healthy community should welcome questions, not fear them. And any philosophy that cannot tolerate scrutiny eventually becomes another belief system asking to be protected rather than examined. Keep your curiosity, my friend. Keep your discernment. Learn from whoever has something valuable to teach, but never surrender your own capacity to think for yourself. Because no guru, channel, influencer, coach, or podcast host, including me, should ever become more important than your own direct experience and your own informed and intuitive judgment. That's a wrap on today's episode of Wildfire. And if something in this conversation landed for you, sat with you, or lit something up inside or underneath you, I'd love for you to share it with a woman in your life you feel needs to hear it. Because that's how this medicine travels. Woman to woman, story to story, heart to heart. If you're ready to go deeper into your own midlife journey, come find me at dembishitha.com. The door to Mana Yoga Medicine is always open. And if today's conversation moved you, the most generous thing you can do is leave a review. It only takes a couple of minutes, and it helps Wildfire reach the women who need it most. Until next time, stay in your fire, stay on the rise, and remember, you are not burning out. You are becoming.